Namaste, Jai Bharat. It's after quite some time that President Trump makes a very serious, sensible, thought-provoking statement. Well, it's not about tariff, it's not about sanctions. Those things really tends to be trivial many times, but this is not that. He speaks with foresightedness this time. He talks about migrations to Europe, and he very clearly sees and understands the nexus between political Islam, left liberals, and coalition governments in Europe. Now, coalition governments in many places, including France and UK, are in majority with the support of the left's liberals. Leftism, though not explicitly Marxism, suffers from this kind of destructive, anarchic tendencies, and that has become a universal phenomenon. True that Marxism is extinct practically, but exists theoretically. Many scholars in academia are fond of Marxian thoughts. We call them as very utopian kind of people. We call them as very unrealistic people. We call them as fantasizers. All these things are applicable to Marx himself. He was a great fantasy creator, but nonetheless, his treatises are instructive, which you can't close your eyes to. I don't subscribe to Marxism, but reading Marx becomes very enjoyable. It's as good as reading a Shakespearean poetry. I wrongly said Shakespearean poetry. Let me say poetry, metaphysical poetries. Shakespearean poetries are not really metaphysical, but they're very thought-provoking. I don't have to speak about Shakespeare's plays and poetry. And reading poetry is always relaxing. Happened to John Stuart Mill. He aspired for the cessation of his father's presence because his father forced him to be a philosopher. So he missed his youth. That's what I understand from what I read. He missed his youth because he could not enjoy in youthful days as the youngsters do. He was, even in parties, he used to go and sit and solve problems with symbolic logic. So that kind of seriousness has gone into his mind. And maybe because of that stalwart father, James Stuart Mill, that John Mill is subjected to this serious kind of philosophical fathership. But then, later when he got freed from the father's dominance, probably after his expiry, he seemed to have said that he had taken resort in poetries and he took to relaxing by reading poetry. So my point is that reading poetry always relaxes. It fills you with it takes you to a different level where you are free from stress. So the fantasy aspect remains both in poetry and in Marxism. You ask Germans, especially who lived in that time of Marx, they consider him as romantic. And Max Muller also, they consider him as romantic. So this fantasy is still running. This romanticism of Marxism still runs. That attracted many youth. My professor used to speak, during MA days. He's a student of Cambridge. He uses in MA days, if you're not a Marxist at your younger age, in teens, then you're not sensitive enough. But if you continue to be Marxist after 28, 29, 30, then you become a waste. This means a lot. His expression means a lot. It attracts you at one point in time. But when maturity sets in, this thing ceases to be and become more realistic. So that's one way. So Marxism still, the left influence, we call it as left, implied Marxian influence still remains in the world. And these left liberals becomes very handy to radical Islam or political Islam. There's hardly any difference between radical Islam and political Islam on practical level. Though theoretically one can view a lot of differences, but the distinction between political Islam and radical Islam and the line dividing them is very, very thin and almost missing. There's such merging, we don't understand it, even with the Marxian dialectical perspectives. So, see the situation in Europe, most places, including France and the UK, they have governments with the support of different political parties, and some of them are left liberal parties. So that handicaps a rigid right-wing approach of those who are in power, because they need support. This kind of coalition, whether explicit coalition or implied coalition, weakens the attitude of any government. One thing which supports the strength of my government is that the people in Bharat, they trust Modi. They're with Modi. They will take his words as serious, because he never spoke something empty in this entire lifetime, in the sense that 3 times he was Chief Minister of Gujarat. I've seen it directly. And then 3rd time is Prime Minister of Bharat. You look at his career, there's hardly any empty word from him. I mean, I've never come across any such. There's no single empty word expression from him, nothing funny and never funny. So his consistency in this character, not to people, and those who know him, they trust him and they believe him and automatically support him. That kind of support is not given to many such leaders. They draw support from many other political parties, and some of them are with the left liberals, and they are easily influenced by radical Islam. And this would destroy Europe in time. And President Trump has warned Europe about migration. The migration case goes on, and of course they are implying, they're making implications on Russia and Belarus. There's Belarus and Russia, they are instrumental in supplying these radicals into Europe through their ways and means. This, I don't know to what extent, it's an accusation. I don't know to what extent it can be treated as serious. But they want, Trump wants Europe of stopping migration. Everyone understands this clearly. The more they're open to such migratory birds who first come there and then start acting in their own manner instead of amalgamating with that society. If you look at our society, Bharat society, our society has a dynamism of getting people amalgamated into it. And same is reciprocative of a Bharatino. He goes to a country, gets blended with them. He doesn't stand out distinct. This is how one coexists. But these people, migrants, they would want to carve out a spurious identity of their own. Is it a fear psychology or false consciousness was for you to decide and understand? But this time, Donald Trump, President, makes very serious statements, which is very, very serious to the future of Europe. He is warning them, and Europe is unable to react because European leaders, governments, in spite of the conviction of what President Trump speaks is correct, are unable to act because they are under the influence of the radicals, the left liberal radicals, political Islam. This is a serious situation. How they will deal with it, how one can solve it. Europe believes that many of the European nations believe that we can, through discussion, change them. Through discussions, they cannot be corrected for various theological reasons. I need not to say for various theological reasons, because they exist for a kind of theological reason. So don't expect dialogues can change them. They will continuously repeat the same thing. Pakistan is a classical example in front of you. Say one thing, do entirely different thing. And what they do, they will continue doing it. Incorrigible is to weaken them to express their activities. So let's hope this situation is going to be. Now, US is legitimately afraid that Europe will become a sky bridge or way bridge to. Europe will become a sky bridge and way bridge to Europe, and the immigrants will tomorrow land up to US. Tomorrow they will land up in US, and he is expecting trouble that way, and they have to deal with the trouble. And once you have unrest inside a nation, your progress gets retarded. Your everything goes to a kind of numbed stage or almost standstill. He's right. And I don't know how to solve this, because both the side people are under compulsion. The compulsions of coercion. We shall see again with some other thought. Namaste. Jai Bharat. Jai Sri Ram.